Good evening and welcome to tonight's Meadville Tribune Forum for the two Republican candidates for Crawford County Sheriff in the May 21st primary. We're here at the Vernon Township Building. We welcome you in the audience here as those at home watching on Armstrong cable or those listening on Cool 101.7 FM. I'm Keith Gushard, one of the reporters with the Meadville Tribune. With me is Rick Green. He's the editor of the Tribune. Now, before we start, I'm going to ask everybody a little housekeeping thing, which is take a moment and turn off the cell phone, please, so we don't have birds chirping or who knows what going off, so we won't be creating a distraction. Thank you, folks, very much. Again, we remind you that questions won't be taken from the audience here tonight, and that the answers from the candidates are to the questions, and that's all to help the voters make up their minds. We appreciate the candidates appearing here this evening to be questioned. With us are Neil Fratus and Dave Powers. Both men are Republican candidates for that party's nomination for sheriff. In the May 21st primary, there are no Democrats on the ballot. Now, we're going to allow each candidate up to a 3-minute introduction of themselves, and then we'll begin questioning the candidates. Each candidate will have up to 2 minutes to answer the question. We drew lots here a few minutes ago to see who goes first with the introduction, and then we'll begin the questioning with that same person and then alternate. So with that, we'll start with Mr. Fratus, and the floor is yours for up to 3 minutes.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for being here. My name is Neil Fratus. I was born in Crawford County and raised in the Titusville area. I currently reside in the city of Meadville with my wife. I have 3 boys, 13, 10, and 2.5. You can hear how quiet it is in here because my 2.5-year-old is not here. I currently been serving with the Crawford County Sheriff's Office for almost 13 years now. I've worked my way up through the ranks of the Sheriff's Office. I've been obviously a deputy, I've been a lieutenant, and I'm currently the chief deputy where I've been for the past 6.5 years. I know every aspect of the Sheriff's Office, from managing the staff to all the administrative duties in the Sheriff's Office as well. I'm a member of the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force. I've been a part of that task force for 9+ years. I'm also on the board of directors for CASA, which is the court-appointed special advocates. My endorsements include the Warren County Sheriff, Ken Claycamp, who's not only the sheriff in Warren counties, but he's also the president of the Pennsylvania Sheriff's Association. Robert Wolfgang, who's also the Forest County Sheriff, and Eric Foy, the Venango County Sheriff. And it's important because those 3 sheriffs border Crawford County, and we have a great working relationship with them, and we want to keep that going. I'm also endorsed by Pennsylvania State Police Lodge 48. That's approximately 400 active and retired Pennsylvania State Troopers. I'm also endorsed by the Frank Branyai Lodge 108. That represents retired and current officers in Cambridge Springs, Cockerton, Linesville, Vernon, and Westmead Police Departments. I'm also endorsed by the FOP Lodge 97. That's the City of Meadville police officers. And I've also been endorsed by the Titusville Police Department. My platform and goals from day one have been safety and security of the courts. That's my #1 priority. Secondly, community outreach and trainings. I think it's very important that when folks see us out, we're not out serving warrants, arresting people, or serving the civil complaints. It's being out in the community in a positive way. That's if we're out serving our civil complaints, stopping by the school, say hi to the kids. I think it's important that the kids see us in our uniform and know we're just like them. You don't have to be afraid of us. And the trainings that we can provide to all the local employers, active shooter training, workplace violence training, just to say a few of those trainings. I encourage all of you to check out my campaign page, Fratus for Sheriff, if you want to learn a little bit more about me. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much. Next up, Dave Powers. Dave, you have up to 3 minutes.
Okay, first off, I'd like to thank the Tribune and Armstrong Cable and Cool for putting this on so we can reach more than just the people in this room. We can reach lots of people in our area. So thanks for having this for us. I'd like you all to meet my wife, Helen. Helen and I have been married we'll be married for 30 years this July. We raised our daughter, Caitlin, who's here. She's 28 years old, and she's last summer married Zeke Young. I'm very proud of both of them and all that they do. They just bought a house, and they're doing really well. I'm a retired Meadville City policeman. I served 22 years on the police department. I achieved the rank of sergeant while I was there. I had to lead people on the streets. I also was the firearms instructor. I had to teach guys on the range, how to survive. I also had to teach them how to understand and keep up with the legalities of using force. And I also currently am a deputy sheriff with the Sheriff's Department, have been for 4 years. I'm also a firearms instructor there, and I've been working there as a firearms instructor pretty much since the second year I was there. My platform has pretty much stayed the same. Also, I have the highest priority of keeping the courts safe and the integrity of the courts safe. And I also have a very strong belief in a person's right to protect themselves, and I really want to push for the Sheriff's Office to be connected to the gun clubs in this county. We have many of them. I want to push for training for people, especially people who have never fired a gun before, that come in and get a gun permit. There's not much out there for them. I want to do a training my way in small groups where people work with people that they know. It's a better environment. They can learn faster and in a much more nurturing environment. I want to teach them also how to basic gun safety. I want to teach them basic marksmanship, how to carry and why to carry that way, how to deal with the legal end of carrying, and also how to introduce firearms into the home when you have children. These are all things that I feel very strongly about, and I think that the Sheriff's Office could improve on in these areas. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dave. Just a reminder to you gentlemen, I did not announce it, but we got a yellow card when you got about 30 seconds to go, and then red when the time's up. So appreciate you guys both being here. Again, we'll start the first question with Neil. Mr. Fratus, what do you think is the #1 priority for the Sheriff's Office?
The #1 priority for the Sheriff's Office, and that's a great question, Keith, is the safety and security of the courts. You know, our job as the Sheriff's Office, not only as the Sheriff, but the deputies, is to keep the people that not only work in the judicial center and the courthouse safe, but also the citizens that come in for personal business. That's the #1 priority. You know, one of the big topics in the last year and a half was the judicial center. It wasn't a very popular decision that was made to the taxpayer building a facility like that, but it was built around safety and security. So I'm not going to complain about it when it comes to that aspect. It's made our job actually pretty easy. My #1 priority, like I said, the safety and security of the courts, is to continue the safety and security and make sure everybody that comes in and out of that building is safe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. David?
Well, I feel the same way. The main reason I feel that way is because what goes on in that building, we have both buildings. We have a lot of highly emotional issues that people come there to get settled. People are fighting to keep things or keep from losing things, their custody of their children, or the rights to their children, their homes, their businesses. People get sued and lose things. There's inheritances they're fighting over. Lots of very, very emotionally charged issues that can sometimes push people over the edge, and we need to be vigilant in how we handle security, because we never know when somebody's going to have an issue that they just can't handle. So that's why I feel so strongly about the security of the courthouse.
Thank you. Rick has our next question.
This question will go to you, Dave. You both have been in the Sheriff's Department for a number of years. If elected, what changes, if any, would you make in the operation of the Sheriff's Office?
I think that Sheriff Hoke has done a fine job getting the office the way it is, especially through all the changes that we've had. I don't really look to change much with the office at all. I do want to work with the whole training for gun owners and making that more accessible to the public, especially the new gun permit carriers. A lot of people come in that they do really know what they're doing to get a gun permit, but we have more and more people coming in every day that know nothing about guns, and they want to get a gun permit and start carrying. I don't think it should be required, but we really need to provide it if they want it. That would be the biggest thing that I would change.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
I have to agree with Dave. You know, Sheriff Hoke has done a fantastic job. You know, he's opened up a lot as far as being out in the community and having a great relationship with the community. As far as changes goes, you know, I want to keep the positive communication we have with all the local law enforcement agencies. You know, like we said, our main goal is the safety and security of the courts. I think it's important that the deputies and the staff in the office get the training that they need. You know, we're dictated by the court schedule, so it's tough sometimes to send deputies and staff members to training. I do want to make sure we're able to do that because that's important. You know, the trends change, things change, safety changes, and it's important that the deputies have that training. I also think it's important we need to look at is how we can streamline some of the things in the sheriff's office. Obviously, we're paid by the taxpayers. I think it's very important that we're not misusing taxpayer money. I think we can streamline the license to carry. I think we can streamline maybe some of our fees. Now, some of those fees are mandated by the state, and we have no choice with that, but I think that's things we need to look at. I also believe that sheriff's office staff and deputies need to understand the policies and procedures. I think it's very important. And I want to also be able to sit down with each and every person in our office and get their ideas. I think it's important. They do the job. The sheriff is just there as the sheriff. The deputies and the staff do most of the work in the sheriff's office, and I believe their input is very important to the sheriff. Thank you.
Thank you. One thing you both have mentioned, you talked about reaching out to the community, having people take gun safety courses through the sheriff's office. You've got obligations with the court, serving court papers, courtroom security. How are you going to do that, given the other duties that you have, and also how are you going to pay for it?
I'll go first.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Good question, Keith. So, you know, how are we going to do some of these duties that we're talking about, other than what we're scheduled to do every day? Here's a good example. We're out serving civil complaints. We serve quite a few civil complaints. Obviously, when people see us out in the public, we're either arresting you or we're serving you a civil notice that you're being sued. There's no reason why we're not, if we're driving down 408 past Maplewood Elementary School, serving our civil complaints, we can't take a half hour or an hour out of our time and stop by the school and read a book to those elementary kids. I think that's very important. That doesn't cost any more money. I'm not asking for more deputies or any more staff. There's no reason why we can't stop and even to provide a training to those kids. You know, bullying, school bus safety. There's a lot of things we can talk to the schools about. I also think it's, you know, stopping at businesses along the way throughout Crawford County. There's no reason why we can't stop by when we're out serving our nasty grams, as I call them, and saying hello to the employers, telling them who we are. I think that's easy. That doesn't cost any money, and that's community outreach. Thank you.
Okay. Well, there was a second part to
sorry.
that, which was how are you going to pay for it? If you're offering training to people,
Sure.
how are you going to?
We have
pay for that?
highly trained deputies in our office. From Dave, for example, firearms training. Him and another deputy are very qualified in teaching the firearms. We have other deputies that are trained in active shooter training. They can certainly provide the training. Those deputies are already trained in the office. With managing the staff and being able to stagger shifts at times, that's how we're going to be able to do these trainings. We're dictated, like I said, by the court schedule. It's not every day that we're stuck in court from 8:30 in the morning till 4:30 in the evening. Those shifts can be staggered. Deputies can start at a second shift, can provide those trainings on a second shift aspect as well. So that's how we're going to be able to do it without spending any extra money or hiring any additional staff. Thank you.
All right, thank you. David?
Well, for the training I was talking about, it would be really hard to schedule when it depends on what the court schedule is doing, so we pretty much would have to work on that after hours. The fees would be paid for by the student. They should be able to cover everything. The problem with my course and having most professionals teach it is to teach a group of 2 to 5 people this kind of training isn't very, it's not going to provide a lot of extra money. And for their time, they wouldn't make a lot of money. So it would pretty much have to pay for itself, and that wouldn't cost the taxpayers anything. The student themselves would be paying for that, as far as that training is concerned. Another training that I had in mind was for the deputies. I've stopped at the Northwest Training Center and talked to them, and they are all about having the sheriff's office start coming to their classes. There's a lot of really good classes that the deputy sheriffs could take at the Northwest Training Center. And they have some of the greatest training. I went through lots of their training in my time with Meadville City Police. They have focus training, and they have close quarters combat training. They have a whole list of, there's some trainings that they couldn't go to because deputies can't investigate crimes, that kind of thing. But there's there's all kinds of other courses that they can take up there, which we would have to work around the court schedule, obviously. But as far as training the public, it would probably have to be an after-hours thing.
Okay, thank you. Rick?
All right.
We'll start with Dave on this next question.
What legislation, if any, would you propose at the state level to help the sheriff's office with its operation?
There's been legislation that's been introduced, I think, 3 times to restore the sheriff's authority. I don't think that if the sheriff's authority was restored, that it would be like change anything that we would, our normal operation. But it would make it easier for deputies and some of the things that they run across. For example, when we find illegal drugs at the screening area, we don't have the authority to do anything about it. We have to call the city police and have them come and arrest it. And so then you're adding another agency, and it gets kind of redundant. It'd be a lot simpler in those cases if we could go ahead and do what the police would do. But I don't think that we should be out on patrol or anything like that. I don't think that's our mission. That's not what the sheriff's office in Pennsylvania is for. So that would be one piece of legislation that could help, but like I said, I don't think it would make a big difference in how our day-to-day operations would go.
Thank you.
That's a good question. I do agree with Dave. The authority bill would be the only legislation that would, affect the sheriff's office and that I would be interested in. And the only reason it is kind of what Dave said. It's frustrating when you're at the door scanning folks in and they have a small amount of marijuana or drugs in their possession, and we can't do anything about it. In the sheriff's office, whether you're Act 2 or Act 120 certified, we're trained in things like that. And it's frustrating when we can't do something about it. Many times we've been out serving bench warrants, which is part of our job at the sheriff's office, looking for these folks and come across drugs, come across other things, weapons, and there's nothing we can do about it. It's very frustrating. It's frustrating to have to call the state police or the local city police, and they're busy enough, answering their calls, taking calls for service, and we have to call them and tell them, hey, can you come investigate this, because we don't have the authority to do so. That authority bill is not a priority. I think we're busy enough with the courts. It certainly would help in the way of when we do see something, we can do something about it. I can share a real quick story with you. I was out serving a PFA several years ago, one of our job duties, and I was at a housing complex, and behind me I heard a slap like that, like somebody had gotten punched. I turned around and saw a female standing there holding her face. I assumed she must have got punched by somebody, and some of her friends were yelling, hey, you need to do something, you need to do something. So I certainly finished what I was doing and rushed up there as fast as I could, and the female had a mark on her face where she had been punched in the face. I was told what happened, but I didn't see it. I had to call the state police and wait there out of frustration for 45 minutes for the state police to get there to do something about it. So it was very frustrating that we don't have that authority to do something when we see something. So the authority bill is where I would have to say is the only legislature I'd be interested in. Thank you.
Kind of a follow-up to that, if that would pass, the authority bill, would that mean an increase in the sheriff's budget? I mean, the sheriff's budget right now is about $1.1 million, and would it have to be increased? And if so, by how much? Because then, the commissioners are the one to control the budget, which might mean a tax increase.
Yeah, so the authority bill wouldn't change anything. If that bill passed, that wouldn't change what we do on a daily basis. We're dictated by the courts. That's our #1 priority, taking care of the courts, whether it's the courthouse or the judicial center. That authority bill would make it easier for us to know that we could do our job if we saw something happen while we're out serving our civil papers, serving our warrants, taking care of the courts. It would take the frustration away from us not knowing we can't do something about what we see and what we're trained to do. So I would not ask for more staff, and it would not change the budget in the sheriff's office. It would just be that feeling of knowing we can do something and step in when we need to. Thank you.
Dave, same question. Do you think if that passes, the budget would have to go up for the sheriff's office?
I wouldn't think that it would have to. It depends on how vigilant the deputies were. I mean, they could raise the budget in overtime if they weren't watched after. I mean, we'd have to keep their priorities straight as to what our job is, because if they felt that using their time to patrol when they should be just getting back to the office to work on something else, they could get themselves into stuff which generates court time, which takes them out of our system for the courts, which also could generate overtime and that kind of thing. So, yeah, it would depend as long as the office was ran the same way with a better understanding, you could keep the budget the same.
Okay, thank you. Rick has our next question.
Okay, this one goes to Dave. You're both deputies in the office. If you would win, would you keep your opponent on the staff after the election?
Yes, I would.
Short and sweet. It's your turn. Payback, right?
Yeah, I agree with Dave. I certainly want to keep Dave on the staff. You know, Dave's a firearms instructor and has done a fantastic job this past 4 years, so that's no question.
Well, Neil, this goes to you. It kind of goes back to a budgetary thing. Right now, the county has some private security at several locations. The Public Defender's Office has private security, one of the magisterial district courts. There's also a deputy on the door at the old courthouse with one deputy sheriff and 2 private security officers. Do you think those private security positions should be done away with and it should all be deputies in those posts? And why or why not?
That's a good question, Keith. You know, it seems strange, you know, when you go over to the courthouse and it's half empty and you see 2 security and 1 deputy sheriff at the front door of the courthouse. It makes you question, you know, how many patrons are coming in the courthouse. Some days it's under 100, some days it's over 100. And the whole second floor of the courthouse is empty. You know, that's something definitely we need to look at. Does it make sense that the sheriff's office doesn't take care of the whole entire courts, the courthouse and the judicial center? I believe that's our job. The sheriff's office job is to protect the safety of the courthouse and the judicial center. In the courthouse right now, and the reason why we're over there is because adult probation, who's a court-related function, is still operating in the courthouse in the basement. So our job is obviously to protect the courthouse employees, which is obviously the adult probation and the other offices that remain in there. So to answer your question, I believe that the sheriff's office should be in charge of the entire security of the courthouse and the judicial center.
David?
Yeah, I think the security was the compromise, and we have a deputy over there now is part of the compromise. Since we've been over there, my experience with them is we've trained them, and they've gotten a lot better. They do things our way. My concern is about the future. It's my understanding that we're going to move domestic relations into that building, and we're going to move the magistrate into that building, as well as probation is going to move back into that building. So we're going to have a lot more in that building, and I don't know if what the compromise is going to end up being. Are we going to bring more security guards over there, or are they going to be expecting the deputies to take over? That we'll find out in the coming months, I suppose.
Thank you.
Okay, now that we know that you both will have each other on the same staff, have you thought about making any other personnel changes within the office if you're elected? And I think this one goes to Dave.
Personnel changes, I didn't really look to do personnel changes. What I did look to do was to create some redundancy in people's jobs. We have a few people that work really hard and don't really have anybody that can do their job when they're not there. So they can't, if they end up sick for a couple days, they come back and they've got work piled up. It's harder for them to go on vacations and that kind of stuff. So I'd like to have some deputies cross-trained well enough that they can hold down the fort for each other when somebody's either on vacation or sick. There's also some other duties that I would like to get more specific with. I'd like to send some deputies to some special training to do more hazardous duty, so that when we have a dangerous PFA to serve, or we have a dangerous warrant to serve, that I can call upon certain guys that are better trained for that job to go do these jobs, instead of just pulling whoever's available off to go do that job. We also had a change in the PFA laws, so we're going to end up confiscating more guns more often, and I want to build a system, a better working system for the processing and care of these guns, so that they're processed in, they're taken care of, so that they don't rust, and that when the things are, the PFA's being settled, we can get them back to the owners as soon as possible. I'd like to have a couple deputies working on that as cross-training again, so.
Thank you.
As far as personnel changes go, obviously if I'm elected, the chief deputy position would be open. I believe we got to have a process. The process would be if there's somebody in the office that is certainly interested in moving up in the ranks in the office, whether it's the chief deputy position or the sergeant position. That's the only two positions we have ranking positions in the office. There needs to be a process in place, an interview process. You know, and I think it's important maybe to get some other department heads involved in that interview process. Certainly if somebody in the office wants to advance, we want to give them that opportunity. But I don't think it makes sense just to throw somebody in that position and not give them the tools they need to do the job. It's very important. For example, the chief deputy position. You know, you have to know every single aspect in the sheriff's office, all the administrative duties. When the sheriff's not there, you're in charge. You got to be able to do those things. And I certainly just don't want to throw somebody in that position and not give them the training that they need, or have the confidence, you know, that they're going to do a great job when you're not there. I don't see any great personnel changes, you know, outside the, you know, other than those two positions in the office. It's important, like Dave said, to have training to the deputies in the office and the staff. You know, I want to make sure they know what they're doing, and I want to get their input. I think that's very important as well. We know we have a great rotation schedule in the sheriff's office right now. Every deputy in the office knows every single position amongst deputies in that office, and that's very important. You know, when you have folks off, you can rely on another deputy to do the job because they're trained that way. We want to continue that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Question, Neil, we'll start with you. We've got some changes coming to the court system. I mean, Judge Vadero's going to be retiring. Judge Spatero, I don't want to say one way or the other because I don't know, but he's closing in on retirement age. So we'll probably end up with a new president judge under the tenure of whichever one of you gentlemen becomes sheriff. What changes would you suggest to the new president judge that comes in about changes with courthouse security? Do you see anything that's lacking at this point?
Yeah, you know, it's going to be, obviously you're going to have another personality now. You know, Judge Spatero isn't the same as Judge Vadero. So obviously one of the first things we need to do is sit down with the president judge and explain to him, you know, those judges now know what we do in the sheriff's office, but I think it's important that we're all on the same page. You know, we need to work together with the courts. You know, obviously we sit in the courtrooms every day, and Judge Spatero may have a different view on things than Judge Vadero does. It's important also, adult probation office who works for the courts. It's important that we work with them. We work hand in hand with them every day, whether we're serving a bench warrant or we're bringing their probation folks in. We need to keep that communication open with probation because we need to know who we're dealing with when we do bring these folks in, or we're out searching for them. So, you know, the first thing we need to do is sit down with Judge Spatero, get his views on things, you know, just touch up on obviously the things that we do and get some ideas. And it's obviously very important to have a great relationship with the president judge, whoever that may be. Thank you.
Thank you. David?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we'd have to sit down with Judge Spatero. I don't know what his views on some of these things are. But though I don't believe that we're lacking a whole lot in our security, I think we work really hard at having the best security we can have. He's one of the judges that's more lenient about moving prisoners in and out during court and that kind of thing. I think he's probably pretty satisfied with the way we do our job as it is, but I would definitely be open-minded to anything changes that he would have, that he would like us to make.
Okay. Thank you. Rick has our next question.
After the election, there'll be at least one new county commissioner to work with. How do you see the relationship with the sheriff's department and the county commissioners, especially during budget season? And what would you do to make a smooth budget process?
Well, myself, I've never done the budget. I've been I'm a deputy, so I don't get involved that much with the budget. But I'm pretty good at working with people and working through issues to find out, you know, different ways to settle issues. And You know, I know enough about the sheriff's office to know that we don't get a lot of the other offices have funds that they get. They're mandated by law that come in, and the only one that we really get that I know of is the concealed carry license money, which my understanding the sheriff's office doesn't even get to keep. So they basically have to fund us all, and there's things that we need to do our job, and I think that's where Nick has done such a great job of trying to work through those issues, and he runs this it gets the job done, but it tries to do it as cheaply as he can, and I would be trying to achieve the same goals that Nick always has in that department. So.
Yeah, you know, the last 6.5 years being in the chief deputy spot, I've had an understanding of the budget. Not as much as the sheriff, but obviously an understanding and knowing what goes on in the budget, knowing the money that comes in the sheriff's office and what goes out, and knowing the line items in the sheriff's office. Most recently, you know, this past year, I got to work a little closer with the budget, and the relationship you have with the commissioners at times can be very tense. I think the commissioners agree with that as well. You know, you're asking for money, they're saying take away money. It's very challenging. We certainly don't want to sacrifice public safety, and it's a challenge. When they tell you to cut this, cut that, and you go through every line item and you say there is nothing else that we can cut, it definitely can get tense. You know, having that experience in the chief deputy spot and knowing the budget, that's important. You know, as I'm the only candidate that has that experience working with the budget and can tell you, you know, what comes in and what goes out. So with a new commissioner coming in, obviously we need to keep a great relationship with the commissioners, whether they're new or they're returning as commissioners. You know, they control our budget, they control our money, and so we want to work with them, especially throughout the year. I think it's important that we meet with them and we bring them over, and I think it's important that they come over and visit the sheriff's office. You know, they need to see what we do. They need to see what we're using, what tools we need for the job. I think that's very important. So, thank you.
Thank you. And we'll start this question with Neil. Under the Pennsylvania law, it's legal to possess a medical marijuana if you have a valid patient card. But the possession of that violates federal law, and that prohibits a person from owning firearms or ammunition. Now, the sheriff's office processes the gun permits. So how would you enforce this, what seems to be a conflict?
You know, as sheriff, I will take an oath to uphold the law. Sheriffs do not write nor they pass the laws when it comes to medical marijuana. I will enforce the laws as written, fairly, without favor of fear. Thank you.
David?
Well, one of the problems with that is you don't have there's not a system for the background check to show that you have a medical marijuana card. And so I can ask, but they don't have to tell me that they have a medical marijuana card. So if I run somebody through the system and there's no red flags, they get approved, and I don't have any reason basically if you don't have a reason like that you know of, they're not going to come in and show you the card, is what I'm saying. Then I have to give them a license. That's just the way it works. So the whole thing about all these states are legalizing marijuana, and it is still illegal federally. And so this is just one of those mixed up things that you're going to get into when states are doing this. And until the background check includes your medical history, I guess, then you're not going to find out about it. So there's nothing I can do about it either way. That's how I look at it.
All right. Thank you very much. We've come to the point in the evening where our questions have concluded. Now we're going to give each candidate up to 2 minutes to make a closing statement. We're going to go in reverse order from where we started. So that means, David, you begin, and you have up to 2 minutes.
Okay. You've heard some of the issues tonight, and of course we always wish we could have got into some other issues, but we couldn't. I just want people to understand that I have 26 years in law enforcement experience. I've been dealing with people for all these years, serving the public. I left law enforcement for a while. It's a kind of a job that can wear you down about people. If you really care about people, it can wear you down. And when I came back to law enforcement working at the sheriff's office, I was amazed at the number of people that came in and remembered me and told me stories about what I did for them. It's seemingly thankless job that I was amazed at how many people I affected. And so working at the sheriff's office was a good healing process for me, and it made me realize that I did make a difference in people's lives all those years, and it was for something. And now that I'm here at the sheriff's office and this opportunity has arose, and I've realized that with my background and my experience that I could make a bigger difference if I was the sheriff of Crawford County. So that's why I'm running for Crawford County Sheriff. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Neil, you have up to 2 minutes.
This sheriff race is about this, folks: qualifications and experience. I'm the only candidate who was born in Crawford County. I'm the only candidate who's a career deputy. I'm not working in a retirement job while collecting a taxpayer-funded pension. I'm the only candidate who takes after-hour calls from my personal cell phone in regards to bench warrants, and I do so without extra compensation, and that's important. I've been doing that for well over 6 years. I'm the only candidate who has been endorsed by the city, county, and state FOP, representing hundreds of active and retired law enforcement personnel. I'm the only candidate who is endorsed by bordering county sheriffs, Venango, Forest County, and Warren County, and that's important. I'm the only candidate who has served in every supervisory role within the sheriff's office. I'm the only candidate who attends and speaks on behalf of the sheriff's office to civic groups. As your next sheriff, I want to take this office forward. I want to hold this office accountable because we're being paid by the taxpayers. I expect my office to act professionally, respectfully, and fairly. I hope from what you heard tonight, I have earned your vote for Crawford County Sheriff. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now, tonight's forum will be shown on Armstrong Cable's Channel 100 and Channel 23. Kevin told us that it'll be on Friday, May the 3rd at 2:30 in the afternoon, also at 1 o'clock on Saturday, May the 4th. It also should be on Armstrong's on-demand service. We want to remind you there's a couple other upcoming question and answer forums as well. We're going to have the Pencrest School Board candidates questioned on May the 7th, which is a week from tomorrow, and that's going to be at the Sagertown High School at 7 o'clock. And then the Democratic candidates for Meadville City Council will be questioned on May 13th, that's a Monday at 7, at a public forum at the Lou Davies Community Center on Park Avenue in Meadville. Both Armstrong and Cool 101.7 have been invited to provide live coverage as well. We remind you to get out and vote for the candidate of your choice in the May 21st primary. Again, thank you to Neil and Dave for coming with us tonight. Neil Fratus and Dave Powers, both Republican candidates for sheriff. And on behalf of Brick Green and the Meadville Tribune, I'm Keith Gushard. Have a good evening.